Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic here, and the yellow area here, that's for dense smoke advisory for the Kenai Peninsula on up into western Prince William Sound, and this is out through 1 p.m. Wednesday, the way it looks at this point in time. And that's for areas of dense fog. Possibly you could reduce visibilities under a mile, in some cases even less than that, with the Swan Lake fire continuing to burn at 60,000 plus acres. Anyway, from there we'll move on to the fire danger chart. Quite an improvement here in areas, especially up in the Tanana Valley, upper and central Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, on down into the eastern Alaska range due to system that brought rainfall to that area and cooled the temperatures off across much of the area, the exception being the Copper River Basin, where today still rising into the 80s, in fact, upper 80s, some areas. Chitina had 88 degrees at 3 p.m. this afternoon, and over toward McCarthy, actually it was a location called May Creek, had 86 degrees with 81 at Galena, but much cooler up to the north with showers and thunderstorms this morning, and overnight brought 4/10 of an inch of rain. That was a 12-hour amount, or less, and actually a 12-hour amount, but that was at Tok had that amount, while Chicken had roughly about, I believe, 1/4 of an inch of precipitation and lighter amounts elsewhere, so it really knocked it back. And then up in the upper Yukon Valley, still extreme fire danger up there along the Porcupine-Yukon River, and the high fire danger extending over somewhat into the Koyukuk Valley, and then it drops off, and then it's still kind of an expanded area of high fire danger here on the north side of the Seward Peninsula, back toward Buckland, and pretty good here in the west-southwest interior. Of course, precipitation now moving in, a lot of clouds in that area there with the next storm coming in. Susitna Valley, high to very high fire danger, extends over to the Manuska Valley, down into the greater Anchorage area, and then of course on down mainly the central and western Kenai Peninsula, and again the extreme fire danger there in areas, and actually a narrow band there along the valley, the Copper River Basin. And satellite imagery today showing mostly clear skies here, actually high pressure building in over to the west, over the southwest part of the state, turned the wind flow around, blew the smoke out, and also taking with it here the low cloud and fog deck that was a lot farther back to the west and northwest over the weekend. In fact, Saturday into Kodiak Island, I believe, earlier on, but you can see it's kind of pushed it well off to the east and southeast here, kind of still wrapping back along the North Gulf Coast there. Cordova, they had about 2/100 of an inch or 1/100 of an inch of precipitation earlier today. I think that was just thick fog there, heavy dew with the low clouds, and then the southern Prince William Sound, and then that also extends down along the southeast coast, which some cases got into the inner channels early on, but temperatures today in the lower to mid-70s this afternoon across all the southeast coast with partly mostly sunny skies, but the low clouds, fog hanging right along the coastline. And then this area cloudiness associated with the upper disturbance that brought the cooler air in across southern Alaska in places, and the precipitation there for the Alaska range into the upper Tanana and 40-mile country. Some more clearing up there, but we have thunderstorms developing there near and just east of Arctic Village there, with moisture flowing mostly to from southwest to northeast and taking a turn to the east here north of the Brooks Range. And as I mentioned, we have the thunderstorms kicking off up over the extreme eastern Brooks Range with Arctic Village, or near just east of there. A couple of troughs. This one got a pretty good kick to it with winds gusting to about 50 miles an hour at Cape Lisburne, with some light precipitation with it. Another one there, weaker, brought some moisture to the central Arctic coast, dry on the east side, VFR, and some drizzle, low clouds, fog there in the Bering Strait area, and then the rain shield with this complex system, actually two lows here, one just developing in this area this afternoon, and a little bit better developed going off to the south there. Good flow from south to north here, bringing nearly an inch of rain, or did bring an inch of rain to Adak. Again, that's a 12-hour amount ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And some rain, gusty winds into the Pribilofs, gusts 35 miles an hour, gusts 40 to 45 there in the central Aleutians, and all moving northward, a few hundredths of an inch, about 400ths of an inch falling at Kipnook today, and just now beginning to rain, so those amounts will increase over the next 24 hours. And then ridging here over the western interior, still a lot of clouds under the ridge there in the Kuskokwim Valley, but again it breaks out, sunshine, Kodiak, some areas there, Kodiak Island reaching the mid-70s this afternoon away from the water. And same thing, Kenai Peninsula near 80 with same thing in the Susitna Valley, cooler near the inlet but not much, Kenai at 72. And the Copper River Basin, the hottest in the state with 80s. And the southeast coast, not too bad for tonight, about like you saw last night. Areas of smoke, Kenai Peninsula, otherwise mostly clear. Southern Alaska beginning to clear out here with high pressure over the eastern interior. Risk of a lingering thunderstorm or shower here over the extreme eastern Alaska range, otherwise drying out. Moisture in the form of kind of showery, light precipitation from Kuskokwim Bay right up into maybe the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then back along the northwest coast. It's pretty light, the leading edge of that precipitation field there, but will be more steadier and heavier down toward the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. Gusty winds, maybe up 30, 40 miles an hour here along the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta coast to the Pribilofs into the central Aleutians. That next one's pulling northward. Gale warnings for the central Aleutians tonight, and then lighter winds and lighter precipitation to the west there behind the system. And then moving ahead to tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly sunny, warm, temperatures again 70 to 80, Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula into the lower 80s, and maybe even about repeated today for the Copper River Basin. Risk of a thunderstorm though down toward Kennecott and maybe back toward Northway, or Nabezna actually, but just a slight chance, nothing widespread, a little bit better over there in Canada. And also a chance of thunderstorms down to near Skagway and White Pass and Chilkoot Pass there, mostly on the north side of the border in the afternoon. Otherwise, good rain pushes right up, especially on the southern slopes of the Western Brooks Range, could be moderate to briefly heavy at times. And then downsloping will make it lighter on the north side of the range out toward the western Arctic coast, possibly the central coast, getting a little bit of light rain in the afternoon, and then not as windy. At low with the next one there weakens down to 1,007 millibar, almost actually troughs out here, but it'll still keep it breezy and wet for the central Aleutians, edging over toward Nikolsky, or I'm sorry, the Fox Islands there with some light rain, drizzle, and fog. Again, like today, mostly on the Pacific side of the peninsula, mostly clear for Bristol Bay, and mostly sunny for the southeast coast. Again, temperatures up into the 70s. And then for the outlook for Wednesday, another partly and mostly sunny day here over the southern panhandle, good sunshine up to the north, sunny and warmer yet here over southern Alaska, possibly up into the eastern interior as well. You can see this front makes a jog to the east here across the northern interior. That's going to push some light rain or showers in toward mainly White Mountains northward up into the western part of the upper Yukon Valley, which would help reduce the fire danger there if it happens. Better chance of rain there along the Koyukuk Valley and the southern slopes of the central and eastern Brooks Range, clearing and scattered showers back to the west, narrow band of light rain and showers and/or showers with clouds extend out into the Bering Sea, add some fog to that, and the next system coming northward there will increase in winds once again late in the day and for Wednesday evening here over the central Aleutians and the Fox Islands as well. Looking at the low temperatures for tonight, pretty mild once again, but everyone below 60. So not quite as warm as it has been, but 55 to 60 for the lows here up over the eastern northeast interior areas, as well as south central Alaska, 55 to 60 for the lows. Otherwise, mostly in the lower 50s on down toward Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula, 40s to near 50, southeast coast in the 50s. And for your highs tomorrow, not too bad, actually well into the 70s, maybe even approaching 80 in some locations there for the southeast coast. Cooler along the coast, as it usually is, with that low cloud deck still meandering around near or offshore there. Susitna Valley, edge it up a few degrees, possibly into the lower 80s for your highs tomorrow. Same thing for the Kenai Peninsula. Some areas of the Copper River Basin back into the 80s as well. 65 to 73 here over the central eastern part of the state in the interior, with 70s down toward Iliamna Lake to near King Salmon, and lower 60s for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and lower 50s there for the Seward Peninsula, as well as the western Arctic coast. Warmer to the east side there with a little more offshore flow in the Aleutians, the usual 40s to lower 50s. And for your lows out that way, in the 40s there for the Pribilofs as well, up to St. Lawrence Island. Lower to mid 40s along the Arctic coast, and lower 50s here over the central and eastern interior. Some areas dropping into the upper 40s and 50s, lower to mid. Now for the south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, lower 50s, 50s for the Panhandle. And then your highs Wednesday afternoon, a little bit shaded up a few degrees here for the Madawaska-Susitna Valley area into the Kenai Peninsula, probably nearer into the lower 80s in the interior there. Same thing for the Copper River Basin. And another day in the 70s, mid to upper there for the southeast coast, and mid 70s over the eastern interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, IFR here. Much of the Aleutians right on up through the Bering Strait to the northwest coast. And up here along and just off the central Arctic coast, VFR southward till you get into Prince William Sound, maybe a little bit of marginal there with IFR, Gulf of Alaska, again low clouds and fog, right on up to the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, that burns off down there. Chance of thunderstorms near Skagway, White Pass, and Chilkoot in the afternoon, and also here over the Wrangell Mountains, possibly as far south as Kennecott on up into the Tok Northway area, but nothing very widespread. And actually, these will be diminishing in the afternoon. And then for Wednesday morning, IFR, Southern Panhandle, low clouds, fog, and marginal becoming VFR, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, VFR, Fogneck Island, marginal for Kodiak, and then VFR, Kenai Peninsula, right on up across much of the central eastern interior to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. IFR to the west here, as you can see, southern slopes of the western Brooks Range southward, in and out along the coast here, down across the Alaska Peninsula, and IFR mostly for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. And for the afternoon, this area kind of shrinks a little bit, but still pretty well either marginal or IFR. Best chance of marginal back to the west or to the north here now, just a narrow band of IFR up to the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula there and toward Norton Bay. And again, IFR, southern slopes here, kind of progressing eastward with the moisture streaming northeastward there. So IFR developing on the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range with marginal VFR extending all the way over to the border. Downsloping VFR flow for the eastern north slope, VFR southern Alaska, eastern interior, right on down to the coast here and the Panhandle. And for passes tomorrow, Anatuvik and Adigan looking good. VFR, probably see for both passes, especially Anatuvik with the moisture coming up, see thickening and lowering middle and high level clouds, thick cirrus. Otherwise VFR, Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy, VFR, looking wide open for windy, VFR, and Isabel, VFR, a few of the taller clouds could possibly develop into a thunderstorm near or in the pass. Just a slight chance for that same sort of situation to happen here for Mentasta as well. Actually, maybe a little bit better than Isabel for Mentasta. And Tanita, though, no thunderstorms, clear skies, Celine's visibility is unlimited. And Portage, same thing, clear skies, VFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing level, 6,000 feet up here along the Arctic coast, 8,000 near south of the Brooks Range, 10,000 all the way up to the Bering Strait, eastward across the central interior, warm air aloft associated with an upper level ridge here just south of Kodiak Island, 14,000 foot freezing levels with that, otherwise 12,000 here, the Aleutians and southern Alaska and the Panhandle. Icing, flow of moisture moving north or from southwest to northeast with a little bit of an eastward push up here with a westerly flow coming over the top of the ridge. So areas of moderate or considerable moderate rime icing here in advance of that frontal boundary. Northwest coast, southern Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, trailing on back down into the central Aleutians, but really up there anywhere from 10 to 12,000 feet. Upper level high here at showing the jet stream just south of Kodiak tomorrow, and that pushing the jet all the way up there to the Arctic coast and coming back around, but good flow out here, kind of splitting, so not much of an eastward progression to those systems as they come in, mostly going up to the north or some of them dropping off to the southeast. And for 9,000 feet, strong winds here, 30 knots over the eastern Aleutians. Fox Islands, 45 knots, 45 to 50 all the way northward there to the northwest coast, 15 over the eastern interior areas. And the Panhandle, northwest breeze, 5 to 10 knots or 5 to 15 knots. Southwest, west-southwest, or west for the North Gulf Coast, turns southwest for Kodiak, but we're just looking 10 to 15 in here. And it picks up to 25 for the Alaska Peninsula, increasing to 25 there for the Cape Newenham area, and only 15 over the eastern interior. Light winds out over the western central Aleutians. 3,000 feet, about the same pattern here. Good southwest flow, 30 to 45 knots. 30 to 40 knots there over the southeast Bering, eastern Aleutians. And then with this low tracking northward, a surge of stronger winds, 35 to 45 with that from the Seward Peninsula up to the northwest coast. Much lighter, 5 to 10 knot winds over the interior, and 5 to 10 for the Panhandle. Turbulence, smooth here, central eastern areas, and moderate chop, likely Alaska Peninsula to the Fox Islands and areas all the way up to the northwest coast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Cindy Preller. She is the Tsunami Program Manager for the National Weather Service in Alaska region. Thanks for joining us again, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
We're talking about tsunami awareness and safety here in Alaska especially, and one of the things that has been one of your main focuses is the Tsunami Ready program. What is that, and how do Alaskans find out more?
Awesome. Yeah, Tsunami Ready is a National Weather Service hosted program in partnership with Storm Ready.
Okay.
And it is a program that we conduct with our partners in the state, but it's mostly community driven. So if a community wants to become Tsunami Ready, well, the first thing they need to do is get a hold of me or their local WCM at a weather forecast office or their tsunami team at the state level.
So, and this is something that's a NOAA grant, so there's money available to help encourage the preparedness at the local level there in the city or the village.
Yeah.
What are some of the places that have done this already?
Oh, our oldest Tsunami Ready city is Seward,
Good.
you know, but also Sitka, Homer, Valdez are the, you know, the main players, but we've got several Tsunami Ready communities that I'm very proud of. It takes several years to accomplish this. And so a few of the things that they do is the tsunami risk will be assessed by someone like me or another scientist will help find out, you know, really what their probability is. We'll create an inundation map, an evacuation map. They'll have a mitigation plan. We will set up some partnerships with the schools, make an evacuation shelter, and then they need to practice. But it is the city that owns the program, really. It's up to them. And many cities would like to have sirens, and so we help them get those, and, you know, and they practice, they have to practice.
Sure. So let's say I'm driving into a place like Seward that's tsunami ready. What are some of the things I should look for as maybe a visitor so I know maybe where I need to go or can be more aware of my tsunami risk?
Absolutely. The Tsunami Ready signage is really blatant. It's this, you know, blue and white curling wave sign, and there's different shapes of signs that'll show you if you are in the hazard zone or where the evacuation routes are and when you're out of shelter.
Okay. So this is a multi-step process that helps the residents be more aware of their own risk, but then also prepare for when that risk arrives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, many communities sound their sirens daily, some sound them weekly, you know, to make sure everybody knows what they mean. And there's often drills. We have an annual drill once a year. We have Tsunami Awareness Preparedness Week, and that's a good time for each community to do some exercising.
Okay. And is this a program that is unique to Alaska?
Absolutely not. It's national.
Okay.
And all over the country, you'll have the same signage, so it's consistent.
Good. So if I'm taking the kids to California, I should be able to see something familiar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, some communities hesitate because they think it'll discourage tourism. And so I would like to tell those communities that what they're actually doing is they're encouraging responsibility.
Sure.
The tsunami's going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to hit every coastline. So, you know, it's not about when, it'll be any time. So the fact that they're showing tourists that they are making steps to be prepared for this, I think would encourage people to want to stay there.
Right, and that would be no different than, say, you or I visiting the Midwest, where we know there's going to be really bad thunderstorms and maybe there's a risk for tornadoes. We're aware of that risk when we go there.
Absolutely. If I see a sign for a tornado shelter, I'm going to remember that.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're just doing a better job of being more prepared with something that's bound to happen again.
I hope so.
Okay. Very good. Where can people go again to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program here in Alaska?
Well, one, there is a Tsunami Ready website. So, just Tsunami Ready,
Google
and that'll
Tsunami
get you
Ready.
there.
Okay.
And then probably the best person for people to contact is their warning coordination meteorologist at their local weather forecast office, which is Anchorage or Juneau, most likely.
Okay. All right. So most of the folks along the Bering Sea coast, again, are not at a huge risk for tsunamis.
No, they don't need to worry about it.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. But always learning to be prepared no matter where you are in Alaska, no matter what the risk, always a good step. And tsunami is a major player in that, as we well know from events like 1964.
Alaskans are resilient. I really believe in them.
Very good, very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us again, and please make an effort to learn more about the Tsunami Ready program in your village and town if you haven't already. We'll be back with Cindy again next time to talk more about the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. We actually have a group of geologists working for the National Weather Service, so scratch your head on that one and we'll join you next time. I'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Packs.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Open water here into the southeast Chukchi Sea, western Arctic coast, or sea ice free water, I should say. And also here in the just north of the east side coast there. And then mostly open, but there are a lot of little ice flows all through this blue shaded area here. And no change really expected here for the next 4 or 5 days. It's kind of shifting around a little bit with the currents and whatever way the breeze is blowing. Out here in the Chukchi Sea, at least this stretch through here may advance north there due to the southerly winds coming into the area. And for coastal water forecast, south coast of the Panhandle, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon, otherwise lighter to the northwest, northwest at 10 on the north coast, south 15, Lynn Canal, same thing for Stevens Passage. West 15 for Clarence Strait. And then even lighter winds in store. All the inside water areas, call it variable at 10 with slight seas. Light westerly winds along the south coast at 10 knots, seas 5 feet. And west-northwest, 10 knots or less for the north coast there with 5-foot seas. Prince William Sound, westerlies at 15 tomorrow, seas 2 to 3 feet. West at 10 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and about 20 knots here for the west side, and continues to increase. Barren Island, small craft advisories. West winds 30 knots tomorrow, seas 7 feet. Small craft advisories also for Kamishak Bay, winds out of the west at 25. Much lighter for Cook Inlet, westerlies at 10, seas 2 feet. And then for Wednesday, southwest breeze now returns to Cook Inlet, only at 10 knots though, seas 2 feet, and that'd be in the afternoon. And west 30 though, small craft advisories, pretty good stiff westerly wind. Kamishak Bay turns northwest at the same speed across the Barren Islands, drops off to 15 for the western North Gulf Coast. Light southwest breeze there on the east side, and Prince William Sound, light west winds with seas at 2 feet. Kodiak Island, west-southwest at 25 knots. Small craft advisories there in all those areas, and that extends all the way down to Castle Cape from Sitkinak for west winds at 25. Also, we've got gales tomorrow on the north side of the western Seward Peninsula, Pacific side, southwest at 20, southwest 15 for Bristol Bay. And then 25 knot southerlies there on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula on Wednesday, southwest 15, both for Bristol Bay and the area from Cape Saratchev up to Castle Cape there, and Castle Cape to Sitkinak. West winds 20 knots. Small craft advisories continue on the east side of the Kodiak Island, those marine zones. For those westerlies at 25, only 15 though for Shelikof Strait. Western Aleutians, the far western zone, north winds at 20 knots, turn northwest 20 here. And then Adak and Atka there, just in advance of that front, still have some gale warnings going, 30, 35 knot winds, seas up to 15 feet. And gales also cover much of the Fox Islands out of the south, 35 knots, seas running 10 to 15 feet. And then bring it down a little bit and change the direction here slightly. Southerlies to southeast, 30 knots. Fox Islands, seas 9 to 13 feet. 20 to 30 knot winds with a pretty good easterly component here for the central Aleutians. Swinging around to the north, 25, and then dropping off to 15 out of the northwest from Amchitka to Shemya. And for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island, south winds 30 knots, seas 7 to 10 feet here. And gale warnings north of Nunivak Island, south 35, 13-foot seas. Same thing for the Pribilof, southerlies 35 knots, seas 15 feet. South of Nunivak Island, 30-knot winds. And also south 30 for St. Matthew Island. Lighter winds coming up for Wednesday. St. Lawrence Island, southwest 15, south 15 north of Nunivak Island, but staying a little brisk here south side of Nunivak Island there, west of Kuskokwim Bay, south 25. Same thing, small craft advisories for the Pribilofs. Southwest 15, St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, easterlies 10 to 15, southeast 15 central coast, a little brisk, call it east 20 here on the west side. And then from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, southeast 25. Small craft advisories actually extend all the way down to, well, beyond Wales to St. Lawrence Island. And then for the outlook on Wednesday, southwest 20 there from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, south 20 on the west side to the central coast, southeast 15 to 20 for the eastern stretch of the coastline. And for tonight, rain advancing northward with a little bit of an increase in the winds here, but staying pretty brisk. Could get pretty windy there. In fact, we have gales down through this area in advance of this system with rain extending to the central Aleutians southward. And high pressure will begin to clear the skies out over the eastern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.